Already, I hope all of you have gone through the first video which I have forwarded in the group. So let me briefly go through once again the concepts which I have discussed in the first video. So I have started the discussion uh, with the module 1 content. So module 1 content was with respect to implementation strategies for digital ICs, introduction from full custom to semi-custom and all those details. Then I've shown you a graph where it has shown there is a huge gap between the productivity of engineer versus the logic transistors per chip. Then I explained regarding the simple processor how the data path, control, memory and input output are being designed using different implementation strategies. I gave example of system on chip, example for HDTV, different parts of it. Then we have seen impact of implementation choices, how the flexibility is going to adversely affect the energy consumption, right? The energy consumption will be very much less if you use hardwired design, but the flexibility will be very low. Next, we have seen implementation choices. The whole digital circuit implementation approach has been divided into two broad categories: full custom, semi-custom. In semi-custom, we have once again divided into subdivisions. We will go for full custom design only if you want to make a drastic change in the available design strategies which are available. So full custom will start from the scratch. Everything will be designed by the designer. One example of Intel 4004 processor I have shown here. We will go for full custom only under following conditions such that it can be reused many times, can be amortized over the large value, that is processor and controller. Okay, then cost is not the prime criteria. Only under such conditions we'll go for full custom design. So I have shown some more examples like Intel 4004, Intel 8080, Intel 8085, Intel 8286 and 8486. All these are very good example for full custom design. Okay, next we'll go for cell based design. So since the custom design approach proves to be prohibitively expensive, a wide variety of design approaches have been introduced over the years to shorten the automate the design process. This automation comes at the price of reduced integration density and performance. One rule will hold good here: the shorter the design time, the larger is the penalty incurred. The idea behind cell based design is to reduce the implementation effort by reusing the limited library cells. The advantage of this approach is that the cells only need to be designed and verified once for a given technology, and they can be reused many times, thus amortizing the design cost. There is also a disadvantage. The disadvantage is that the constrained nature of the library reduces the possibility of fine tuning the design. Cell based approach can be partitioned into number of classes depending upon the granularity of the library elements. If you go for the standard cells, as I have shown in this particular slide, the standard cell approach standardizes the design entry level at the logic gate. A library containing a wide selection of logic gates over a range of fan-in and fan-out counts is provided. Besides the basic logic functions such as AND, NAND, OR, NOR, XOR, XNOR, and flip-flops, a typical library also contains more complex functions such as AND OR inverter, MUX, full adder, comparator, counter, decoder, and encoders. To be effective, this requires that all cells in the library have identical heights. The width of the cell can vary to accommodate for the variation in the complexity between the cells. The minimization of the interconnect overhead is the most important goal of the standard cell placement and routing tool. One approach to minimize the wire length is to introduce feed through cells, right? So here we can see in this block diagram we have a RAM, a multiplier, functional modules. We have row of standard cells. We do have space for routing channel and feed through cells. A far more important reduction in wiring overhead is obtained by adding more interconnect layers. Okay, so once again, one more examples I have shown here. The evolution of standard cell design. Design here shown design is a 3-layer metal technology. Wiring channels represents a substantial amount of chip area. One more new generation standard cell. Here the design is 7-layer metal technology. Routing channels have virtually disappeared and all interconnection is laid on top of the logic cells. You can see there are no routing channels only visible on this new generation standard cell. To make the library based approach work, a detailed documentation of the cell library is an absolute necessary. The information should not only contain the layout, the description of functionality, and terminal positioning, but it also must accurately characterize the delay and power consumption of the cell as a function of load capacitance and the input rise and fall times. Next, we'll see how a particular standard cell will look and how the different parts can be identified. So here you can see different metals or different components of this standard cell, which is for 3 input NAND gate, has been given with different colors. The red color, whatever you can see, nothing but the polysilicon gates, right? So you can observe that how the layout strategy follows the approach outlined as shown in the figure. Supply lines are distributed horizontally and shared between cells in the same row. Input signals are wired vertically using polysilicon. The input output terminals are located throughout the cell body, right? Now, the success of standard cell approach can be attributed to a number of developments, including the following: the increased quality of automatic cell placement and routing tools, and the advent of sophisticated logic synthesis tools. These are the two important criteria which led for the success of standard cell design. Next, we'll see example of automatic cell generation. So here we have shown there are 5 sub figures. Let us consider these figures as A, B, C, D, E. In figure A, it is the cell schematic are developed first. The SPICE netlist is starting point for the automatic layout generation. In figure B, the tool proceeds along the same line that a designer would follow. The transistors are placed in cell architecture with predefined topology rules. Figure C shows the cell is routed symbolically, and figure D, you can see here the routing is rearranged and the cell is compacted to meet design rules and library preferences. And figure E, you can see the final step, it cleans the cell. The final step cleans the cell of any remaining design rule errors and produces the final layout. That is figure E. Okay. Now, before going to the details of PLA, let me show you an example of a Boolean function. Here there are two functions, f0 and f1. f0 contains the variables x0, x1 plus x2 bar. f1 contains a variable x0, x1, x2 plus x2 bar plus x0 bar into x1. Every logical function can be expressed as sum of product SOP, that is and or. Okay, now if you try to manipulate this f0 and f1 and convert it into in terms of NOR and NOR format, we'll get these two new equations. All right, a small manipulation. In detail manipulation steps are not shown here. You can try by your own. Very simple technique you can use. right? Now, once we come to the PLA section, PLA is programmable logic array. So in the early days of mass integrated circuit design, logic design and optimization was a manual work, right? In the late 1970s, the first approach towards automating the tedious process of designing logic circuit emerged, triggered by two important developments. First one, rather than using ad hoc approach to laying out logic circuits, a regular structured design approach was adopted called programmable logic array, that is PLA. Second one, the emergence of automated logic synthesis tools for two-level logic. Okay, now let us discuss PLA in detail. So as shown in this slide, a first layer of gates implements the AND operation, also called product terms or minterms, while the second layer realizes OR functions called as the sum terms. Hence, a PLA is a rectangular macro cell consisting of an array of transistors aligned to form rows in correspondence with product terms and columns in correspondence with input and output. The input and output columns partition the array into two subarrays called and OR planes respectively. That means whatever may be the Boolean function, if we can convert it into NOR and NOR or sum of product terms, we can implement it using this simple structure of AND plane and OR plane. Let it be whatever may be the Boolean function. An automatic generated PLA implementation of the logic function, if we try to implement this Boolean function and with the help of PLA, and if we generate the layout, this is how it looks. You can see there is a power supply VDD, we have AND plane, right? Then we have a OR plane, right? Then we do require ground to complete the circuit. So x0 x1 are the variables, x0 x1 x2 are the variables, and we are getting here f0 and f1 as the outputs. So this is how, once we implement this Boolean function with the PLA, this is how it looks as the final end layout. So next is breathing some new life in PLAs. So river PLAs, cascade of multiple output PLAs. Adjacent PLAs are connected via river routing. So they have shown how exactly the river routing happening at this point. If you come here, you can see no placement or routing needed. Output buffers and input buffers of the next stage are shared. Experimental results, you can see standard cell 2-layer channel routing, then standard cell 3-layer over the cell routing, OTC stands for over the cell routing. Network of PLAs 4-layer OTC, then river PLA 2-layer, no additional routing required, right? So river routing, that is 2-layer river PLA, is like additional option what we have. Macro modules, right? Now before explaining this, we should be knowing what is a macro cell, mega cell, and intellectual property. Standardizing at the logic gate level is attractive for random logic functions, but in turns out to be inefficient for more complex structures such as multipliers, data path memories, and embedded microprocessors and digital signal processor. Cells that contain a complex that surpasses what is found in typical standard cell libraries are called macrocells or sometimes megacells. Two types of macrocells can be identified. First one is called as the hard macro, which means or represents a module with a given functionality and a predetermined physical design. The relative location of the transistors and the wiring within the module is fixed. In essence, a hard macro represents a custom design of requested function. In some cases, the macro is parameterized, which means that versions with slightly different properties are available or can be generated. Here, as shown in this particular slide, it shows an example of hard macro cell of 256 cross 32 SRAM block is generated by a parameterized module generator. Besides creating the layout, the generator also provides accurate timing and power information. Modern memory generators also include an amount of redundancy to deal with defects. If by chance some detect read and write defects happen, we should be having additional circuitry to take care of that. So this is how a hard micro for a SRAM looks. Now coming to the soft micro. Soft micro represents a module with the given functionality but without a specific physical implementation. The placement and the wiring of a soft micro can vary from instance to instance. This means that the timing data can only be determined after the final synthesis and placement and routing steps. In other words, the process is unpredictable. Soft microcell generators come in different styles depending on the type of function they target. Virtually all of them can be classified as structural generators. The advantage of this approach is that the generator exploits its knowledge of function under consideration to come up with clever structures that are more efficient than what logic synthesis would produce. Right, as shown in this figure is a soft micro for multiplier macro module. As shown here, the two instances of an 8x8 multiplier module with different aspect ratios. Aspect ratios, you can see the length and width of these two micro modules are different. Here it is square, here it is looking more of a rectangular. That is what is the difference in aspect ratios. The modules are generated using the module compiler tool from Synopsys. As can observed from the layout, a common standard cell methodology is used to generate the physical artwork. The contribution of the macrocell generator is to translate the compact input description into optimized connection of standard cells that meet the timing constraint. So the multiplier soft micro module, both layout implement a 8x8 booth multiplier but with different aspect ratios. The compact input description to the compiler is shown in the gray box on the top. What are the compact input description that we are given? String mat, booth multiplier, directive, multiple type is mat, output signed 16-bit A into B. Right? Now the availability of microcells has substantially changed the semi-custom design landscape in the 21st century. With the complexity of ICs going up exponentially, the idea of building every new IC from scratch becomes an uneconomic and it's uneconomic proposition. More and more circuits are being built from reusable building blocks of increasing complexity and functionality. Typically, these modules are acquired from third-party vendors who make the functions available through royalty or licensing agreements. Macro modules distributed in this style are called intellectual property or IPs. Right? In this particular slide, I have shown an example of a wireless communication processor. But before explaining that, you should be knowing what is a macrocell. What is a macrocell, which is called as IP, intellectual property. This approach is somewhat comparable to the software world, where a large programming project typically makes intensive use of reusable software libraries. Good example of commonly available IP modules are embedded microprocessors, controllers, DSP processors, bus interface such as PCI, several special purpose functional modules such as FFT, filter modules for DSP applications, error correction coders for wireless communication, MPEG decoding and encoding for video. The design of system on chip is rapidly becoming an exercise in reuse at different levels of granularity. At the lowest level, we have the standard cell library. At the level higher, we have the functional modules such as multiplier, data path, and memories. Next, we have the embedded processor. Finally, application-specific megacells. Right? So, students, I will be explaining this example of processor for wireless communication. Right? So here, as shown in the figure, we have a CPU, protocol MAC, on-chip network, flash controller, I/O circuitry, so on. On the right side, you can see the layout for the same. So as shown in this integrated circuit implementing the protocol stack for wireless indoor communication system, the majority of the area is occupied by the embedded processor. Now this processor is Tensilica Extensa processor and its memory system. This processor allows for flexible implementation of higher level of protocol stack, that is application network, and enables change in the functionality of the chip even after fabrication. The memory modules are generated using module compiler provided by the process vendors. So here you can see we have made use of different IPs, we have integrated them, and we have developed this particular wireless communication processor. So I am going to stop this explanation of this module 1 here only. I will be continuing with the next part in the next class.